What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of the hosts of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabro.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. It's Kevin Valentin here, the other half of the podcast. Kyle, what we got going on today, bro?
All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do a segment on the Eastern Conference Finals matchup between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. So, we got the number one seed going up against the number two seed. How we got to this point is pretty straightforward. The Heat defeated the Philadelphia 76ers in the second round of the playoffs, winning that series in 6 games. And then to kick it over to the Celtics defeated the Milwaukee Bucks, who were the defending champions from last year. They won that series in 7 games. And it sets up a great Eastern Conference Finals matchup between Boston and Miami. This is the first time that both of these teams have matched up in the Eastern Conference Finals in over a decade. That was akin to what we saw with LeBron, D. Wade versus Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. So we get to revisit this, what I would consider a pretty nice rivalry between both teams. But, we got Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown with the Celtics. We got Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo on the Miami Heat side. So this is going to be a great series, no matter how you slice it or dice it. So, Kevin, to kick this one to you, who do you see winning this series in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Heat or the Celtics?
So, Kyle, I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics. I am going to say that this series does go 7 games. I feel that the kind of defensive matchup between both teams is going to be very interesting. We all know that Boston is the best defensive team in the NBA. We do know that the Miami Heat have been one of the better defensive teams this postseason, and of course led by Jimmy Butler and a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Bam Adebayo. We know that they can be physical as well. Now, the reason that I'm actually going to go with Boston is because I feel that Boston's 2 stars provide a little bit of a mismatch for Miami. Now, outside of PJ Tucker and Jimmy Butler, they're on-ball primary defenders. I don't necessarily know if they're going to be able to guard the likes of Jason Tatum and Jaylen. With both of them having the best postseasons they've ever had, Jason shooting a career high in total field goal percentage and things of that nature, I think that provides a problem and a struggle for the Miami Heat. Now, obviously, the benefit to this is Boston's going to be able to get them in foul trouble. If you get PJ Tucker off the floor, obviously at that point, that means you have lanes to the basket, and that means that you're going to be able to provide a lot more mismatches. And I think that is going to put Jason in a better position to get into a rhythm. That's going to leave shooters open for Boston, like obviously Peyton Pritchard, and then of course, Marcus Smart and a couple of other handful of players. We know Al Horford can still bang down low, and he's had a couple of big postseason games in and of itself. Grant Williams showed yesterday that he could be versatile and hit a couple of shots. We all know that if Robert Williams is available, that's going to be very good for the defensive purpose of the Boston Celtics also. But I know that Miami has a little bit of a deeper bench. We all know that Miami has a lot of players that can come off the bench for Eric Spoelstra in this unit. But in terms of having a primary scorer and ball handler, I think that puts Boston in the driver's seat, especially because let's just say for all intents and purposes, Jimmy Butler has a bad game or a bad series because he is the leading scorer on the Miami Heat with 28.7 points per game. 28.7 points per game. They're going to need offense to come from somebody else. And if that doesn't come from their bench, Boston has 2 or 3 options here that can actually go out and get you a bucket. So, yeah, no, I definitely have Boston winning this one. And the reason I say that it's going to go 7 is because I do feel that the defensive presence of each team will bolster the more that the home team does well. So obviously it's probably going to be 1 or 2 Miami, then it's going to go back. 1 or 2 in Miami, then it's probably going to go back and forth 1 or 2 in Boston. I just think it's going to be kind of an exchange of games, and it's going to be who's going to be able to get a win on their opposing home court first. And I don't know, man. Jason's on another level. Jaylen's catching his groove as of late, and then they just, Ime Udoka and his coaching staff have done such an incredible job to put this team in a position to where they haven't been in quite a few years. I know that the Boston Celtics were in the Eastern Conference Finals the rookie year of Jason Tatum, but of course were beat out by LeBron's Cavs. But I think that they're a little bit more poised. They're seasoned veterans now. They know how to go and attack the basket in the postseason. They know how to get their shots. But Jason has emerged as an all-around go-getter and a great two-way player. He's actually emerged as somebody that can go out and get you stops and guard one of the better players on the opposing team. And we all know that Jaylen Brown is a defensive first, and then an improving offensive player the further his career goes along. But I think that 1-2 punch is going to pose to be a little bit too much for Miami, especially if Miami cannot hit shots outside of Jimmy Butler.
So, Kevin, I'm in full agreement with you on this one. I've got the Celtics winning this series. I have them winning in 6, not 7. I just think that the Celtics, even though that I believe that the Heat have a better roster from top to bottom, I think the one thing that will stand out from Boston that's going to work to their advantage is their defense. Because when we look at this past year specifically, the Celtics had the best defense in the NBA, and it has carried on into the playoffs as well. Because when we look back at that Milwaukee Bucks series in the second round of the playoffs, in game 7, the game where it mattered the most, Boston held Milwaukee to 81 points and held Giannis to 25 points when throughout the series he was damn near scoring 40 to 45 points a game in certain elements or certain times of that series. And I think when I look at Boston specifically when it comes to containing Miami, I think what they're going to do is fairly simple. Is I think when the opportunity presents itself, they're going to either trap, double team, however you describe it, Jimmy when it's there, and they're going to force Miami to beat them with guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, and then maybe Kyle Lowry, because they can't allow Jimmy Butler to pop off the way that he did in the first round of the playoffs and in the second round of the playoffs. Because Jimmy, let's just face it, Jimmy Butler is one of the most consistent playoff performers that I've seen in the last couple years. I mean, he single-handedly put the team on his back in 2020 when they were playing in the bubble to a finals appearance and got that series to 6 games when a lot of people thought that it could end in 4 games or 5. So Jimmy's going to be effective no matter what Boston does defensively, except if they go out and decide to double team or trap him. And that's really the point that I'm going to focus on with Boston as far as why I think they will win the series. I think that they're going to be able to contain the Heat to under 100 points consistently throughout this series. Not to say that Miami's not going to win any games in this series. It's just that I think when you factor in what Boston's going to do defensively with Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, who has been improving on the defensive aspects of his game throughout his career, I think that's going to bode well for Boston significantly. And not only that, to kind of like focus on the roster part again. Even though that I think Miami has a much better roster from top to bottom, I just don't think it's going to be able to outperform what the two-headed monster of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be. Because Jason is averaging 28 points a game throughout this playoff run. Jaylen Brown is averaging his career high in the playoffs with over 22 points a game. And we've seen multiple games where Jason has been able to put up over 35 points consistently and sometimes even drop 40 points. So that I think that's something that Miami's going to have to contend with and try to slow down. It's just I don't think that they have the capable assets to be able to slow Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to a point where it's going to stop Boston in their tracks. And also, I think when it comes to Boston's offense, look, Al Horford may be getting up there in age, but he's shown me throughout this playoff stretch that he's been able to step up in the moments where they need him the most to perform at a high level and score consistently and get rebounds as well. And then when I look at Boston's role players outside of Jason, Jaylen, and Al Horford, Marcus Smart, I think, could be able to put 15 points up consistently. We'll see what happens with Williams, because Williams had a great game 7 where he scored 27 points. He led the team. Granted, I wouldn't say that his shooting aspect is the best part to his game, but if they are able to get consistent performances like that in game 7 throughout this series, I think it will bode well for Boston. Peyton Pritchard has been solid throughout this playoff run. Granted, he's coming off the bench. He's playing in limited minutes, but he's been able to put up 10, 15 points consistently. And I think it's going to do Boston very well moving forward in this series. So, when it's all said and done, I do think that Boston's going to advance to the NBA Finals. And it's just simply because I think the 1-2 punch combo of Jason and Jalen, and you combine that with what Boston's going to do defensively, those are the factors and why I see Boston winning the series and advancing to the NBA Finals.